Well, things have changed a little bit around here in the last few weeks. We've been working hard on this facility. It's become very important now that we do all of our mixing here for the whole operation. And it's definitely still a daily adventure, things that we're optimizing, things that we're trying to resolve. But one of the most important things that we've accomplished recently is that this is starting to actually resemble a warehouse. We've been able to get flour up onto a second level, and that's a huge advancement towards the vision for this facility. When we first came here, we needed this facility for flour before we did a single ounce of production. Our Mesa facility had simply run out of space on the production floor for the amount of flour that we were cycling weekly. And for a while, just having the floor to line up 10 to 15 pallets was huge for us. It was life-altering. Fast forward a year, and all of a sudden, we're pushing up against another big milestone, and that's getting ourselves ready to be able to accept a full truckload of flour at a time. This is the natural next breakpoint in the volume ordering concept. So first, when you're buying flour, you buy at a store in a 1 to 3 kilo bag, when you're baking for yourself at home, maybe even less. And that flour is the most expensive that flour can ever be. Then eventually, you end up buying by the 50 pounds or nearly 23 kilo bag. And flour like this you can typically find at, say, a restaurant distribution store. That's where we were when we first started this bakery. You're a little limited to whatever that restaurant distribution store will carry. So from a sourcing perspective, at the time, we had access to still just industrial flour, industrially milled flour. Eventually, we got beyond the bag level and we reached the full pallet level. That's enough bags of flour that the price point drops significantly over just buying by a single bag, or especially buying in the smaller bag increments. And I would say that this is a level that every commercial baker should be trying to get to. If you're not at this level, you're much more limited in what you can do. So you do need to account for the amount of space that it takes to store a pallet, which was a challenge for us going back to the garage. I remember trailer days where we had like a trailer parked in our driveway, and that was where we put flour. And eventually we built a garage structure just for flour, only to get kicked out of that garage structure very soon thereafter. And we built Mesa in a hurry. The one downside for that beautiful building was that it had enough space for 6 pallets of flour on the floor. And shipping has gotten very expensive over the last few years. So I've seen bakeries somewhat recently that have to accept orders daily for flour. And I just think about how big of a risk it is to go to the next day and potentially not have enough flour to bake with. It's the thing that could shut down a bakery before you've even gotten started. So I'm happy that we haven't reached a point that we were really needing to pay for more than once a week delivery, because by the time we got to cycling more than 6 pallets a week, that's when this place landed. Now we're at this point where we can accept more than 17 pallets at a time, and 17 pallets would fill a full truck of flour. It is the next big breakpoint price-wise, and I'm currently in the process of negotiating that with the flour mills that I buy from. Additionally, we are now working on a project with 40 acres of locally grown wheat that we'll be milling ourselves. It's going to be cleaned by this company, Grain R&D, and over the next couple months, I still need to optimize myself here along with the mill so that I'm not having to buy grain in bags, but rather I can buy grain in one giant super sack, again bringing the price down versus the bags, which actually add a surprising amount, add an extra 20% cost to the final product just because it's bagged in 50-pound increments. So I'm very excited about this. It was the result of some pretty intensive shifts on the part of myself and my right-hand guy, Logan, who's been with us for a while. We found this pallet racking in the strangest of places. It was an ad online through a site called Craigslist, which probably many of you are familiar with, and a random yard, a residential yard in town that seemed to be a collector of pallet racking. There was much more to be found there, and it was all in really good condition. We had to clean it, of course, but we were able to assemble this over the course of morning. Actually, by the time we got all the flour on it, it was a couple days. And we still have a couple things to do. I really need to figure out what to do about this guy. I had never had a pallet stacker before, and I bought this one a year and a half ago. I was trying to return it for about 6 months, didn't work out. It's bad on multiple levels, basically, mostly because that back wheel that powers the whole thing likes to slip if the floor is somewhat uneven, so outside, forget about it. And it doesn't like the shiny floor either, so it spins its wheels. It's just a bad situation. The masthead also isn't quite straight. It's kind of on an angle, so picking up a huge amount of flour is a scary ordeal. So I'm in the market for a new pallet stacker, and I'm a little bit nervous about making the same mistake again, because currently I'm sitting on this thing that costs me a fair amount of money, and it's hard to even sell it in good faith. I hate it so much. I will try to sell it, but I'm sure I'll take a big loss on it, even if I manage to. So if you have any suggestions, I'm all ears. We're trying to get this place more and more organized over time. We're getting this area set up for milling now. And so the idea being that these bins actually fit our mill in the proper way, and so we'll be able to mill, and anything that we're not using right away can nest here for however long we want. And that will actually allow us to even practice flour oxidation, which I don't actually know where I personally stand on this topic. I haven't done enough testing. But when it comes to milling flour, many people believe that flour is best used after about 7 to 14 days of milling. And it's because the flour gets enough oxidation in that time to create the optimal fermentation environment. There might be a little bit more to it than that, but there's also another school of thought that believes that you should be using flour that's milled as fresh as possible. And it seems that there's some pretty strong opinions on both sides. So I guess I'll have to figure this out for myself as we continue to mill more grains. Right now we're milling the Corson berries primarily. We're also milling some rye. We're not doing a whole lot of milling of a wheat and then immediately making it. We're testing along those lines, but as the mill becomes a daily feature of ours, we will be able to flesh out, is it better to store the flour for 1 day, 2 days, 10 days? Or is it better to just mill it yesterday and mix today and bake tomorrow type deal, that kind of a rhythm? We'll see what we end up with. This is our kind of Banneton storage area, also evolving, trying to figure out the right system and organization. We have some ideas here that we're trying to enforce the following of, meaning even stacks of 10 of these crates, the right amount of Bannetons in each. For storage, we have slightly different concepts of stacking 5 of these wicker baskets or 2 of the Bannetons. And to be honest, I haven't been at this facility for a few days, and I'm noticing the same thing that I've been noticing over the last 6 weeks. The devil is in the details, and what we're working on as a team right now is, well, for instance, taking the extra few minutes at the end of a workflow to reorganize something like this. It isn't a big job, but these types of little things feel like easy omissions at the end of a long day, and yet what we found is they end up piling up when that's the sort of standard practice, where I'll omit this today, and for the exact same reason, I'll omit this again tomorrow, except tomorrow I might also omit, some other small detail, and fast forward a month or 2 months and the facility can be a wreck. We've been cycling through those kinds of challenges here in particular, where it's a new facility, new team members, still a little less overall experience in the house, and I'm working on refining the little things, embedding the wisdom in the newer team members that actually how you do these things influences how you do the most meaningful parts of the job. And I use air quotes because what does it mean what is more meaningful in the bread production process? Is it the mixing of the dough? Is it the way that you auto-lease the dough? Is it the way that you score the dough at the end? Or is it also the way that you clean a bin in the sink or reset your workstation for the next day? All of those flows have to happen. And any breakage in any one of them, whether it be the cleanliness and organization flows or the bread production flows, has a ripple effect on the entire process. And so I'm trying to impress that upon our team, and that's where a lot of my energy is going these days. It's a step-by-step process. We are trying to learn the most optimal way of sharing all this and getting buy-in. Because what we do above all else is we're regularly introducing our craft to new people. When we open a new bakery, when we have a need for another staff member, both of those have been true in the last year. So a lot of new people in our area have been introduced to artisan baking, and every aspect of it is unfamiliar, even to those who have baked elsewhere in their career, where these details perhaps don't matter as much when the quality of the product is at a completely different plane. So anyway, I'm excited about what's going on here. We still have a long way to go, but it will probably keep evolving. And I hope that in the next few months it still ends up looking different, not maybe in a macro sense, but in the small details, where if you look in the corners, you won't see pileups of things that don't make sense. So one day at a time.